Welcome to MRE Uncut, where we'll give you real and practical insights into the real estate scene in Melbourne. We'll discuss what's happening in the industry, all backed by MRE's history of over 30 years in the game. With that said, let's jump into this week's episode of MRE Uncut.
Welcome back to another MRE podcast. My name's Stephen Fitzsimon. I'm here with Tilly Gillen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tilly. I'm Head of Property Services here at MRE.
She is. She's the guru. Mm. And then I've also got our Head of Livability / Leasing / I don't know, what else could we call him?
Oh,
Jared O'Donnell.
Jack of all trades, isn't it?
That's a good idea.
Thanks,
yeah.
Steve.
They are. They're our up-and-coming superstars. So very important role. At the moment, we've just come out of peak season. Jared, what is peak season? What does it mean?
Well, renting properties, at least in Victoria and probably Australia more broadly, it's almost it's like a cyclical cycle.
Yeah.
It's a cyclical nature.
It's got nothing to do with bike riding, but...
Yeah, thank you. Where we see over summer, we tend to have more people looking for rental properties, more people vacating their rental properties, just a lot of demand, but usually plenty of supply to go with it as well.
Okay, so drivers behind that, Tilly?
I think there's a number of different drivers. There's whether it be international students coming for the start of the school year. We have renters that are relocating interstate or classic, new year, new me, change of job, change of scenery, wanting to try city life or vice versa, wanting to move out to the suburbs. There's really a broad range, but often as well as we move towards the winter months, it's cold, people travel, there's not as many people around. So come peak period, as we say at the start of the year, it's there can be a range of different reasons as to why there are so many.
Yeah, I used to call it the red wine effect. I don't know if you've heard that. Effect. Yeah. Because, on a summer's day, if you want to go looking for a property on a Tuesday night, at 6:30, it's warm, it's sunny, it's light. You can easily facilitate that on your way home. But in July, on a Tuesday night, it's 7 degrees, it's raining sideways, it's pitch black, and I'd prefer to just go home and open a bottle of red.
Oh, absolutely.
So, hibernate, whatever you want to call it, but it makes sense. And we started tracking the level of inquiry and how it changed, and that's when the birth of the peak season, as we define it, came into fruition. And I know a lot of agencies may not have tracked the data to the extent that we do. Obviously, the scale that we're talking about, every bit of data is important. Jared, do you know what the sort of uplift is during peak season at the moment compared to normal months of activity and demand?
Specifically for inquiries per property, we double,
right?
If not more,
right.
It can be a bit tricky to gauge because also at the same time rents go up as well, and that could detract from the inquiry pool.
Yep.
But double's usually a fair estimate.
Yeah, so 100% increase in rental demand for how long does it go for traditionally?
Feels like it's getting shorter, but typically from that second week of January through to the end of April, or at least mid-April.
Okay. So we always thought that it was sort of like up until Easter. I don't know if that's a true
Easter
thing.
Easter came early this year.
Easter was early this year. There's no doubt about that. It was in March, I think, the end of March.
If not, I find even sort of further out, I think we've still got quite a strong rental market at the moment.
Yeah.
Vacancy rates are still quite low. There's still a high demand. So if not further, I think every year it's changing. And we have the base, but there's a number of different factors that can contribute to that. Financial pressures for rental providers at the moment, which is then sort of brought on to renters to have to absorb some of that as well. So, I wouldn't be surprised if we even see that go out a little bit further this year.
Okay, so it's extending more so, and it'll be a different market. Like we've never seen rental growth like we have now.
Yes,
that's the first and foremost. It's just then trying to apply that on a wider market and then into the cyclical period that's impacted by so many other factors. I think it's fascinating that sort of thing is happening, that we're able to observe it. If you're a tenant, then should you bunker down during summer and then look for an apartment in July? Or
it's a strategy.
It's a strategy.
It's That's something that I'd be thinking about.
Okay. But will the rent be higher in July than what it was in?
Typically, we stagnate and maybe trend backwards ever so slightly.
Right.
But not a massive amount.
Is supply greater later on?
Not necessarily, I don't think.
So we've got the same supply effectively because fewer people are moving out, but fewer people are moving in.
Yep.
And the rents are about the same. So there's less competition.
And that's the idea. Our vacates, they might go down a little bit, but the inquiry and the people looking would go down far quicker and far greater than what the supply does.
Right. Okay. So supply similar, demand lower, hence could be slightly reduced prices, but generally it tracks about the same. Do days on market trend outwards?
They do.
Right. So we've got days on market really short in peak time, longer in non-peak time. So you've got a better opportunity to secure properties. The only problem is I'm an international student or I'm a person coming from the country to move down to Melbourne. I can't wait 6 months.
Exactly
I
right.
don't think many people get the choice.
Yeah.
People usually move when they need to move.
Yeah.
And look, I think it'll be interesting this year to see how the supply actually changes in what we would say the downtime of the winter months, because whilst we've still got quite a strong market, there are a lot of owners that are actually getting out of the rental market, whether they're having to sell due to financial pressures and whatnot. So it'll be interesting to see if supply actually does change a lot or not, because owners getting out of the market may mean less supply, even fewer than what we would see in previous years as well. So it may be less supply, but it could be a more tough market this year potentially for renters, and we don't know, but with less supply, still the same amount of renters potentially looking, it could be interesting.
It's not looking good for renters.
No, unfortunately not. It's hard.
Okay, so if we look at this and we say examples, like, Jared, have you got some examples of types of results that may be demonstrating the effect of the peak season?
Well, I've got numbers.
Right.
I like numbers.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, thank you.
Perhaps a little too much.
If we go back a couple of years, right?
Yep.
So COVID towards the end of it, the end of mid 2022,
yep,
things were looking pretty grim.
Yep.
Average rents for properties across the board bottoming out.
Yep.
And then the summer after that, so summer 22, 23, we saw a massive bounce back.
Yes.
And we sat here and we thought that's COVID bounce back. Rents are just getting back to what they were previously.
Yes.
And we thought, like, this is massive. This should be as big as it gets.
Yeah.
And then we've gone through summer 23, 24, and in the space of 1 month from this year, it was January to February, the average rents achieved across the portfolio for properties that were leasing went up by about 10% in 1 month.
In 1 month.
Which didn't happen at all for the entirety of that peak season the year before.
So it was the last peak season was steady in terms of price growth?
It increased.
It increased,
increased.
Not month on month.
No, not to that extent.
Right.
So what we thought was massive a year and a half ago.
How deep's that data pool though?
Well, we lease a lot of properties. We rent out a lot of properties. So we, in a 3-month window from January to March, we'd be leasing about 450.
Right. So
That's
from it's a significant data
pool.
pool. Yeah. And it's gone up by 10%.
In 1 month. So not even from the start of summer to after Easter. That happened in 30 days.
So if we look at this, and I'm just trying to dig a little bit deeper, if you leased your property in January, right, which was the pre-peak season boost in rental growth.
Yeah, it was dawn.
Yeah, dawn. That's a good way of describing
Thank
it.
Thank
you. During the dawn of peak season, you leased your property. You could pretty much sit back and go, well, next year I'm likely to get 10+% more on my rental property just because of the growth that's been experienced in February, March, et cetera, from there on.
Well, yeah, if the vacancy stays as tight as it is or gets even tighter, that's about on par with what we'd be expecting.
Wow. So that's for a renter out there, that's pretty daunting. So 10% in a month, what else did you see?
I mean, just important to state that the 10% that is only, that's only our data, and if we had a much larger pool, it could be a little bit different.
Yeah, and we're not financial advisors or lawyers.
It's a bit excessive. 10% is excessive.
Yeah. All the disclaimers, disclaimer.
So even whilst those rents were skyrocketing, our days on market got even shorter. Our average days on market for a rental property, albeit this massive growth in price, got as small and as tight as our business has seen it since we've started tracking the data.
Yeah. And
7-8 years we've been using that same software.
Yeah.
Which they're two things that don't go hand in hand. That's if one goes up, you'd expect the other to drift out in the same direction. They don't go opposite ways.
Yeah,
which makes it even scarier.
Yeah, that is even scarier. Okay, so we've got a daunting look into the future from that peak season that's happened. What else are we seeing? Like, Tilly, how are tenants reacting to this?
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well because for us anyway, we service quite a lot of Melbourne anyway. So whilst we do sort of see previously the peak rents going up predominantly within the CBD, I think what we've seen this year as well is that those peak periods and the peak prices are pushing out slightly further to the outer suburbs around the city as well. So because there is such a high demand throughout the board, particularly in the CBD, we're actually seeing an increase throughout the outer suburbs, your Hawthorn, your Kew, your South Yarra, and then beyond that even further as well. So I think for renters, they're sort of slightly getting pushed further and further out, creating a larger supply across the board across Melbourne.
Yeah, there's a building that we manage a bunch in Brunswick West that I think is a great sort of indicator for this because they were renting during COVID for just above $300 a week, and now they've come out the back of that. Prior to COVID, they were at about $365, $375, and now they're at $475.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty scary consideration for that crowd, and that's Brunswick West. It's not. It's not CBD, it's not Carlton, It's not around a university, it's not even around a train station.
I think it just as well depends on what the renters are looking for. So albeit they may be pushed out due to increase in competition and rental prices and whatnot, but it could also be due to change in lifestyle. So just particularly over COVID, there's a lot more flexibility in a lot of workplaces, for example, for working from home and not having to come into the office. So looking slightly further out in Melbourne, having the ability to not necessarily travel as much to the city coming into the office, so they appreciate the sort of the suburban lifestyle and not being as close to the city in some cases as well, which is great for rental providers in those areas where it hasn't necessarily always been as busy. But from a renter point of view, I think there are a number of different reasons as to why that may be as well.
I think a lot of it goes back to the one that Tilly said earlier about people being pushed out. I don't know if you two noticed it, but the REIV vacancy data that you not very nicely distributed and handed us over.
Thanks.
They break vacancy rates down into 0 to 10Ks, 10 to 20, middle, and then anything 20 plus. Vacancy rates almost halved in that 10 to 20 bracket over the last 6 months.
Right.
12 months, because they do the rolling 12 months. It's specifically that 10 to 20 where it's just absolutely exploded. I think it's exactly what Tilly said about people being pushed out, people that would traditionally be closer in. And that's probably how we've ended up with that situation in Brunswick West.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that'd be, I reckon, around that 10Ks.
It's about the 10 mark.
Yeah. So we're seeing a shift in what they're looking for. Like, Jared, you and your team are out there doing, 100 opens a day?
Oh, you're being a bit generous.
Okay.
But yes.
80?
I'll say 70.
Okay.
75.
Okay. All right. So I'm a bit of mayo on it.
Yeah.
But so 75 opens a day. How many people are coming to each of those opens?
At the moment, we'd be averaging about 3 to 4-ish.
Okay. So that's 75 by 4 is 300. So 250, let's call it a day. And you're doing that 6 days a week, but Saturdays would be busier?
Saturdays are busier. I mean, 2:20 on a Thursday afternoon isn't exactly the greatest time to get people out. But
yeah, I get what you mean. So during the day, you're getting fewer numbers than at the peak times like a Saturday morning. but you're basically coming into contact with a lot of people.
Yes.
What are they prioritizing at the moment? What are you seeing in like areas? If you see an apartment building, for example, or an apartment building and one's got a gym and a swimming pool and the other one doesn't, is that important to the renters that are out there?
I mean, speaking generally, because everyone has their own preferences, but I think the people that we talk to, it's about location and amenity, not amenity in the building, but amenity nearby.
Okay. Train stations,
public transport,
shopping
grocers, shopping centres. I think people are finding that there are a lot of spots around Melbourne that have those things, and that like you can get those things slightly further out. Maybe you're 2 train stops further down the line, but these things exist.
Yeah, okay.
And they are there.
So they're looking more so for the amenity of the apartment and the area, and rather than the gadgets.
Yeah, as well as an apartment or a unit in good condition, of course. People want to live places that are nice.
I think just further to that too, some of the trends that I've seen is that renters aren't necessarily wanting to have to pay a gym fee, and if they can find it within a complex that has those facilities, swimming pools, saunas, gyms and whatnot, and they are being able to save money by having to pay an expensive gym membership. I think that is an important attraction as well.
As the cost of living sort of continues to increase, people are now looking at, okay, well, I could cut off my gym membership and save myself
absolutely
$100 a month on it. That tells you how often I've been going to the gyms. Yeah, how much is it?
If you're spending $100 a month,
I'm not. I don't know. I see something comes out of my credit card, but it's not for me.
And look, everyone's different. I mean, I guess the type of activity that you're doing that can really fluctuate quite a lot. But even if it just comes down to the communal areas, these more modern, newer buildings have rooftops with entertainment spaces. They've got libraries in them. They've got theatre rooms and whatnot. So it's not even just the physical aspect. It's rather than going out to a cinema and spending, I don't even know what a movie ticket is these days, $20 or whatever it may be. It's everything that's adding up and accruing is really beneficial to some renters depending on what they're looking for, but having these in complexes.
Gotcha. And you mentioned before working from home, so studies, that's a big one. Absolutely. They're in demand at the moment.
And even extra space.
What are they paying for a study? If you've got a 1-bedroom apartment
I'd put 50 on it.
You're $50 for a study.
It's extra space, extra storage space if you're not going to use a study.
Wow.
Maybe I'm being generous. You've looked at me like
I haven't done it recently. I haven't sat there and looked at an apartment studying on.
I'd say if there was a 1 bed at 500 and there's a 1 bed,
it probably ranges as well, depending on
probably 600.
On what that study is, because it could be a study nook built into a room.
Yeah, the old
could
piece of plywood on the end of the kitchen.
That's it, yeah. It could be a complete separate study that, some potential owners like to sort of get away with it being a second bedroom or whatnot. So I think there's a lot of factors to price in that too as to how big that is, but it is quite significant in some cases.
I'd pay the 50 just to have some more storage space.
Yeah. Well, that's another one, isn't it? So storage is king. And it's funny, as soon as you have a property and live out of home, you start appreciating how good it is to have a garage and storage and all of those type of things. So, so additional storage and storage cages, those type of things are good. All right. So we've got a slight shift in the marketplace and where people are going. Tenants, okay, their advice is look at this from a maybe change. It might be the best weather to go for looking for a property, but perhaps September, October, there's pleasant enough weather. You might be able to secure something better or easier during those months. Yep. Landlords or rental providers, as I hear you say, Tilly, historically MREs had a process of trying to get leases to finish during the peak season. That's obviously been thrown a little bit out the window by the significant reduction in rentals due to COVID, and sort of is churning back to that. The landlords, if their properties are finishing during that key period, obviously they're going to be able to achieve a higher price and lease it faster.
Definitely, yeah. And so from a landlord point of view, go back to landlords. The way we sort of approach it is as you mentioned, trying to get them back into that peak period of the market. So we try to encourage longer term leases to get them sort of out of that low period, so that they're increasing their maximum return on the property as well, and putting them in the best position that we can. There are obviously certain factors that you may not be able to change with that approach, in the sense that if a renter breaks their lease midway through or whatnot,
nothing you can do about that.
Exactly, nothing that you can do. But having leases go slightly above the traditional 12-month lease term or whatnot is certainly an approach that we take. And then I think that also sort of somewhat contributes to why I think even in this year we've sort of seen or may see peak period go out a little bit further, is because tenants are holding on to leases where they can. They're not necessarily wanting to move because it is such a tough market. But if they are forced out of a property for whatever reason that may be, it might be now March to April instead of finishing in March, just given that they're sort of slightly going further and further each year as they push out.
Yeah, okay. So we've got landlords can take advantage of it by having leases where possible finishing in the peak season. Tenants can take advantage of it by, if they have the choice, choosing to lease in the non-peak periods. And then if you can't take advantage of it, well, tough luck.
Well, yeah. And I think from a renter's point of view, it just depends what you're looking for. If you're going to look for a property in those winter months, you've got to be prepared for what may be available. If we are seeing a decrease in renters wanting to move during that time and supply is low, you may not necessarily get the same choice that you have in a peak period where there's a much broader range of what you can choose from.
Yeah, I get you.
So it potentially just depends from a renter point of view what your needs and wants are within a property and what risk you're willing to take.
Okay, so moving forward, is there anything that we should prepare for other than what we've talked about now? Is like, if I'm renting my property now, I'm going to lease it in July. Is there anything that I can sort of benefit from if it's not peak season? What should I do? Wait?
Peak season's good, but it's not the be all and end all. Vacancy is going to continue to be tight. If you're an owner and you're leasing your property out in February, or if you're doing it in August, in the current market, you're still going to get a massive return or great results. Numbers might trend backwards a little bit, but not to the point where I'd be saying, let's just hold on to changes.
Yeah, it's not terrifying. It's as Jared said, it may just be a slightly longer average days on market, but it's not at all to say that you won't lease your property or you won't find a good suitable renter that will take care and make payments on time and care for the property as their own. I think it's just all about the timing, maybe in those winter months or that down period.
So if you get the opportunity, take advantage of it if you're a landlord.
Yep.
If you get the opportunity, take advantage of it if you're a tenant by not looking in that period.
Yep.
But other than that, just get out there and find a property when you need to.
Absolutely.
6 months apart, landlords in February and tenants in August.
Yeah. Well, that'll be an interesting time frame. Tilly, Jared, thanks for coming in. Much appreciated.
Thanks
for the
having
insights.
us.